Hi there folks, welcome to the 13th episode of Hour Broadway. This week we'll be looking back at Raw mainly, looking forward to Battleground. That's really all there is to discuss this week, and we'll take our first ever listener question this week as well, but we'll get to that in the meantime. Guess we might as well start with Raw this week, and I'll let you take it away this week, Maxie.
So yeah, Raw this week, where do we start? Where do we start? I feel overall, in a general opinion of the show, it was a show you could have probably missed, and you wouldn't have really missed anything in storyline-wise. But, we'll start from the beginning. Brock's back. We start off with not an authority promo for the first 20 minutes, but a promo in the first 20 minutes that serves the point of a promo, doesn't it? Paul Heyman does his usual, addresses who he is, who he's representing, why they're here, how they're back. And I think for once, they actually had a bit of consistency with their storyline. Like, obviously when Brock returns up, he's like, why are the announcers, not freaking out and stuff? And I thought, great that they straight away announced that he's back, he's here for the title, but in order to get the title, he has to apologise to the announcers. Whether the apologies were
sincere,
I know, and fair play to JBL, selling it well, looking completely just as if he's bricking it. Same with Byron Saxton, who just went, I'm out of here, see you later. He's obviously still feeling the emotional trauma for the first time. But taking Michael Cole to Noogie City. Oh, Noogie? Noogie City. So there's a bit of comedy as well. But at the same time, it's to make the fans feel a bit sympathy for Brock, as if it's possible to do for a guy like Brock. But, it's to show that, he's the babyface in this situation, that he's still got a lot of obstacles to overcome if he wants to become champion, chasing Seth Rollins. I
agree, I thought it was well done. Michael Cole, he always treads this line of being, he can sell being serious really well, but he's always on the verge of being like just so cheesy. And he's so like, all right, Brock, all right, and it's like, he said he's going to apologise. Why are you terrified? Like, I understand why you'd be afraid, but it was too comedic for my liking. The funniest thing of the whole segment, I thought, was just, it's when Brock Lesnar approaches the table and they're all a wee bit like, fair enough, and Michael Cole shoots back, but it's then when JBL stands up looking terrified, and then they're like, you're well bigger than Brock Lesnar. It looked quite funny. And then obviously compared to Michael Cole, it was just, he sold it much better, as if like, all right, this is serious, I'll accept his apology, blah blah blah. And I think it was quite funny when he grabbed Cole. That was, I don't know, it was all right. It just, I felt like that was, I wish it wasn't at the start of the show.
It's weird seeing Brock in a kind of comedy aspect, isn't it? It's usually all serious and heel antics, and for once you're seeing a babyface Brock, and he's just here to have fun, but wreck shit up at the same time.
Good to see him back though. Definitely one of the highlights of the show, just having him there. He's got such a presence about him. It just makes you want to watch. And that obviously led us to the rest of the show, I suppose, with Seth Rollins. I mean, they portray Lesnar as such a beast, so I understand why they had to portray the story of Seth Rollins being desperate to get the authority background about him. But I mean, I've lost track of the number of weeks where it's been multiple Seth Rollins segments in a show. Fair enough, like, this is a guy that you obviously want to be a big star, so you're trying to give him as much screen time as possible. I just feel like they're overdoing it a little bit. And it's when you've got 5 or 6 segments on a show and only one of them is memorable. And fair enough, see if the other segments with Kane and J&J and then with Stephanie and Triple H, if these segments had maybe something memorable in them, it'd be fine, but it was just a wasted 2 minutes of screen time between them. That's what I really felt about it. As good as it is for Rollins to be on the screen, it's useless when you're not actually doing anything. Nothing's actually progressing your character. You can make the point of, right, Lesnar's back, he needs the authority because Lesnar's back, but his ego's too big for him to admit that's why he needs authority around about him. That's dead simple to achieve. You don't need to do it over 4 or 5 segments in a show.
I mean, I can see the fact that it did take up so many segments and it took up a lot of TV time. The only thing I will say is it did, go straight to the storyline. That was the whole point in it. It was going to see everybody failed with Kane. So like J&J surely, J&J rubs them off. So desperate measure, go to the authority, and then that obviously leads to the authority saying, "Come on, bring it all around." But as you say, it's like literally half the show dedicated to him. You think back to last week, it was the exact same, and it's just thinking, you get so many talents, and fair enough, like this guy, he's really young and he could be a mainstay for a long, long time, but you've got to get that perfect balance, and I don't feel they've got that. And fair enough, I say it did build up to the storyline eventually, but I feel, as you say, it didn't really add anything to his character. We already know he's a desperate chicken shit heel, we know that. But even if he maybe bumped into Kane with J&J security, there you go, that's 2 segments merged into one. And maybe in that same segment, then maybe outside the authority's office, so there you go, he walks into the Stephanie and Triple H's office, and you've got everybody in the one segment. I just feel if you're going to do backstage segments, I'd rather you done them for the whole roster rather than just one guy. Because like back in the day, you'd have an Austin one, you'd have a Rock one, you'd have a Crash Holly one, and it still elevated Crash a little bit. And I just feel they're missing that trick.
Definitely, especially when it gets so repetitive, and these backstage things, they always take place in the same areas as well, and it doesn't truly feel like it is backstage, which is fine. That's also the production style. The other downside for me really is that he's offered these people apologies throughout the show, and then there isn't a main event announced, so then you're like, oh well, Rollins is going to be grovelling again at the end of the show, which he was. That was the main event, if you will, of the show. And it's just repeating what we've already seen earlier in the show. And that's almost as bad as double booting a talent, to be honest, is repeating the same storyline. Right, we know he's desperate, cool. But did you really need to take up half of the show with it?
Also this as well, like, I think to end the show, regardless, you still need a strong main event. Even if it is going to be a talk segment and that to end it, you still need a decent main event. But you should not be having somebody going to somebody else and saying, have you seen anything scheduled for the main event? Like I said to you last night, and you're like, no, nothing's been scheduled. And then we'll talk about it later, but the match that was announced, I don't think is a match you should be having as your final match on TV, in my opinion.
Exactly, and that's the thing, the only match announced beforehand was Roman Reigns. In fact, I don't even think the match was announced, it was just that Roman Reigns was going to be in action, which I'm fine with, and I'd be fine with having Roman Reigns in the main event. At least that's a notable name. But when you're just going to roll through your show, fling in random matches, obviously there are no random matches, but just flinging matches in here and there, and then all of a sudden you're at the end of your 3 hours and it's a talk segment. Fair enough, the segment ended up being quite decent, but that didn't happen until well after the 3 hour mark, which is just a pain in the arse for me. I hate having to, I mean, that's it, the first week since not even Money in the Bank, since the week before Elimination Chamber. It's the first week where I've sat up and watched the full 3 hour Raw. So there's obviously an issue there when I finally got to the stage where, it's actually been quite decent, Brock Lesnar's going to be back, so I'll tune in and watch the full 3 hours. Fair enough, get rewarded by Lesnar showing up at the end. Just didn't feel like it was enough. I'd have rather there been a match and Brock Lesnar interferes or something like that. That's better than just, talk segment, then as soon as Rollins comes out, you're waiting on Lesnar.
Do you feel right, because recently every event has been so clustered next to each other, and it's been such a short build, that they're at the stage now, we've got 4 weeks, 5 weeks, how do we extend a build to a show now for 5 weeks? It's like, we can have them keep being in confrontations with each other. We don't have enough storylines for that. So let's be honest. I think the tone of the show was squash match here, squash match there, and it was just keeping people away from each other. And I feel again, even like the likes of Seth Rollins in action, it's like we're trying to protect him because like if he gets a couple of wins, then people won't see him as the the shite bag champion that's going to somehow scrape a victory or whatever against Brock Lesnar, and I feel that's hurting the product as well because we're not getting to see him in action.
Exactly.
So you've got both your main event guys not in action, and that immediately I think brings your show down. It's great they're in talk segments, but you still want to see them wrestle and just take it to the elite level.
And of course we did get a bit of action. I mean, it's always great seeing Lesnar throw people about. Highlight of the end of the show definitely for me was the German suplex on Kane. Thought it looked amazing, just ridiculous, just sheer power. Obviously Rollins sells the German suplexes really well. It was decent, but I didn't like the whole. It was obvious they'd set it up earlier in the show, like you need to have a plan B, etc. So I thought it was quite obvious that J&J and Kane were going to duke out and then come back in and attack Lesnar. I thought that was quite obvious. I'd have preferred sort of a situation where, well, obviously what happens is everybody's in the ring and Lesnar comes down. Then they duke it. I'd have rather it was the other way and you have them stand up for Seth Rollins and Seth Rollins dukes out the back of the ring. Lesnar gets the better of J&J and Kane. And then Rollins comes in out of nowhere and takes Lesnar out. So it's sort of like, you can depend on me instead of Rollins being so reliant on the authority. It just felt like as if, like, no, I don't need you to help me against Lesnar. We're just a family, blah, 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 for the whole show. And then at the end of the show, it's, no, I really just need you to help me against Lesnar. It's like as if that's like weeks of a build rushed into a 3-hour show.
I think you can definitely see short-term booking in it. The likes of, I feel, if they hadn't rushed Brock Lesnar back, I think you'd have seen. I don't think we'd see Kane as a heel anymore because I mean, it's as if that whole build in the last couple of months has just been scrapped. Like there's always hints like saying, "Oh, he's turning face," and then it does something really heelish. It's like, well, are we cheering for him? Are we booing for him? Do you want us to start rooting for him to begin a turn? It's just as if it's like we're going to go that way. Oh, ratings are quite bad or whatever. Let's get Brock back. Kane, that's switched, and it just feels just complete rush booking for me.
Another thing for me that I just absolutely hated was, right, you've got J&J, Kane and Rollins against Lesnar. Cool. Lesnar's actually holding his own for the most of it because he's a total beast. But then when it gets to a situation where the authority's got a clear advantage, I totally expected Dean Ambrose to get in the scene. Fair enough, he's been in this feud with Rollins for months and months now. That's ended, but now he's seemingly in a feud with Kane. I mean, they had a match to start the show. So why was Ambrose not there? Like, Rollins interfered in that match, cost Ambrose the match, so why was Ambrose not there at the end of the show? That seemed like a puzzle piece that was missing for me.
You can only think that they maybe think that the pop that Ambrose would get would take it away from Brock Lesnar, but I mean, storyline sense, it would have made complete sense that Ambrose comes back after the shenanigans that happened previously.
I mean, that's like, in the way that I'd have had it play out, as I just mentioned there, what then goes on for Rollins coming in saving the day is then that Ambrose comes out because Rollins getting Ambrose business earlier in the night. It makes perfect sense. Then it means next week when Lesnar isn't on the show, you can have them going against Ambrose again. And fair enough, it's revisiting that feud, but it's for 1 week. You get in my business, I get in yours. So then, did they even need to have a match? No, necessarily. Can have him attack Rollins at some point, cost Rollins a match. That just continues multiple storylines at the same time.
Or even have Ambrose against Kane and Joey Mercury, have something like that.
Something like that, and it's just, I feel like there's never any depth to any of these storylines, and that's where the real issue is. But I mean, I'm fine with it going forward. They've obviously got more stuff to do. I don't know when Lesnar's next scheduled to be on Raw. I don't think he'll be on next week anyway. And then obviously the week after's the show in Japan. So who knows? But I mean, Lesnar's always just good for an appearance, just regardless of what he does.
It just adds that little bit of legitimacy, doesn't it? It's like something's going to happen. You just feel like it's a big occasion when Brock's there, which is what Vince McMahon described in Austin's podcast when he's there. He's just, when Lesnar's there, it's just something special. He's that special attraction.
Definitely, and it's a shame that they're not building up anybody else to be like that. Fair enough, Lesnar isn't that because of the build, he's just because of who he is. That's the reason he's such an attraction. Just it's a shame that they've got nobody else that's even close to him these days. But no, that was fine. Just going forward, I'd rather see more logic instead of just repetition every week, and even repetition within an episode of Raw. Just seems to be losing it a wee bit.
I think the thing is, we've got 3 weeks until, obviously, Battle. I think it's 3 weeks now, till Battleground. I know, on our 3 Raws at least.
Right.
You just hope over that kind of time, we can see something a little bit different. I think, actually, come to think about it, some of the Ambrose stuff, they probably have that in SmackDown, because obviously you're never going to get a Lesnar appearance on SmackDown. But so hopefully, we'll just get a couple of twists and turns, the same kind of stuff on the road to Battleground, and it should be a good match, though.
Aye, definitely looking forward to that anyway. It should be, as long as they can try and limit the interference, it should be a good match. Another match that I'm assuming is going to happen at Battleground will be Ambrose and Kane. They had a match here. I thought it was fine. Just Kane did what he does. Ambrose did what he does. I really liked the segment to end the match though, with the interference, and then Ambrose taking this ducking the clothesline with the suicide dive to the outside. Thought that was really well done. And then the fact that Rollins couldn't actually do anything to Ambrose. Ambrose had the upper hand, and just the fact that he had upper hand with Rollins is what cost him the match actually against Kane. I just felt like with doing that choke slam through the top rope, it should have looked much better than it did.
I didn't think
but it was like totally legitimate weight. Like anybody could take that and lose, and I'd be fine with that. It's a choke slam through the top rope. It's a big move. Obviously, adding on to the fact that then later in the show he chokeslams Lesnar and that, and it looks impressive as well. It's still an impressive finish.
Do you think it's something he should use more often, or should have used more often with Johnny's career?
Definitely. It's like, it's kind of like, this ties into a discussion that I had, must have been on the Squared Circle portion at Reddit. Basically, the whole discussion stemmed from kind of what I spoke about last week with Owens and Cena. And it's like, our finishers are being too watered down, like, it's just at the stage now where they should start introducing more finisher reversals as opposed to just kitting out of finishers. And my whole point was I would rather see there be more of a nod towards there being quote unquote super finishers. Like Cena quite often in Owens match he went for it, going for the attitude adjustment for the top rope. That's something that takes his finish to the next level. Randy Orton's version's obviously when he teases the punt. When he doesn't get somebody done with RKO, he doesn't go for the RKO again, he goes for the punt. So it makes more sense that way, like you're not going back to the well again, trying the same move. I just wish there was more people had something like that as opposed to hitting the same finish 3 times before getting a pinfall at a pay-per-view.
I was going to say, just you mentioned everything for the top rope, could you imagine Triple H hitting a Pepsi plunge?
No way his quads, I don't think he'd be hitting that. But I mean, that's like where you take it to the next level. Like Triple H against Lesnar at was it Extreme Rules 2 years ago. They had the match, and Triple H wins because he pedigrees Lesnar onto the steel steps. Like that's.
You could even argue
that's taking it to the next level. That makes more sense. You can buy that as a legit finish.
Or even with Triple H, you could argue like he doesn't get the job done with the pedigree. That's why the sledgehammer comes out. Again, obviously maybe needs a bit of shenanigans and a bit of interference in that. But is that super finish? It's going to this place where he doesn't always go. But if he's really desperate, he's going to go to this place to get the job done, and that is the sledgehammer.
Exactly. And I mean, and then people always seem to go, oh no, but what about Undertaker, HBK? Like they used the same finish multiple times, and it's like they did, but it's 2 guys with like 20 plus year careers, 2 guys that have had classic matches against each other, know each other's moveset inside out. That's where it makes sense for somebody to kick out of somebody's finish twice.
And the thing with them is the occasion.
Aye.
And it's psychologically two of the best workers and can tell a story in the ring. And they had a great backstory for the multiple finishers. But obviously, streak in the line, career in the line. It's like you hit a finisher, you think that's going to be it, but this is the streak that's in the line here. This is something that's makes this guy immortal. You know what I mean? You just can't defeat this dead man. And in Shawn Michaels' case, it was my career's line, but this was my boyhood dream, and I'm not giving up so easily. So that is why I can understand the kickouts to the finishes or the multiple finishes.
that's an example where it makes sense, but most of the time it doesn't make. I can understand if, like with Kevin Owens John Cena, I think the story that they've tried to put over on commentary is Kevin Owens the one guy that John Cena just can't figure out? Right, fine. But when you've got a finish now that has been kicked out of more times than you've successfully pinned someone with over the last, well, since you started doing the US Open Challenge, right? So, in fact, he's probably 50-50 with successful pins and unsuccessful pins following that attitude adjustment. That's when you need to start rethinking things. That's when it's getting a bit too ringy on our style for me. I'm not a fan of that. But I mean, that's here where it was fine. Ambrose countered the first chokeslam attempt, so then Kane gets him with a chokeslam through top rope, 1, 2, 3. Convincing finish for me. Obviously the interference plays a role in it, so Ambrose doesn't come off as bad. And Kane gets a vital win. Still, I'm cool with them. I wasn't as cool before last night with them going to the pay-per-view. After the match, I felt a wee bit better about it. I'd have felt a whole lot better about it if Ambrose had interfered at the end of the night. But I mean, I think they're sort of this is them doing a sidetrack with Ambrose until, because I think he's going to end up back in the main event scene anyway. He's sort of just this like bobbing about near the top, whereas the only other guy that's near that is Roman Reigns, and they're taking him on a clearly very specific path before bringing him back to the main event. But I think it's definitely working with Ambrose. He's still massively over, especially with the crowd last night.
I think with Dean Ambrose, as you say, it's a matter of time. I think he will be WWE champion, at least within the next 18 months. I don't want to say next year, because I still feel it could maybe be like maybe no this December, but the following fall. But I definitely feel like a title run's pretty soon. Regarding this feud, I think it's the case. They need to keep him away from the title, but at the same time, he's still interchanging with the main event storylines. That's why he's going up against Kane. Kane, we argue, does need a bit of momentum, needs some victories. So if Kane can get some maybe screw finishes over on Raw, builds him up with a bit of momentum, makes him think, oh, Kane's a bit of a legitimate threat. And then at the end of the day, Ambrose, I think we're pretty convinced, will win the pay-per-view feud. Yeah, the match there to win the feud, keeps the fans supporting him, keeps him up and over against the Authority, and just continues his momentum into wherever he goes at SummerSlam.
Definitely.
Actually, I compare him at the moment to... It's kind of like when The Rock was out of the title feuds in like 99, 2000, and he was in a kind of feud with Mr. Ass. Like, he was still massively over, but the title just wasn't there for him. But it was just somewhere to keep the fans cheering him and just keep his momentum up. That's what I kind of compare it to.
Storyline terms, definitely, I agree with you there. It's just, it's so hard when you've got... Now when you've just got the one title and you've still got the same size of roster and try to keep everybody relevant. That's where I feel as if they need to try and go back to not actually a style of booking or anything like that, but storyline wise, there needs to be more crossing streams, more interaction between superstars as opposed to just these people are in this storyline, they don't interact with anybody else. It's not realistic at all. And I mean, that's how I just feel like guys like Randy Orton, Sheamus, Wade Barrett, guys like this could be involved with different storylines just without being an active participant in the storyline. They can still be there and be utilised. Like, I mean, if you're wanting, this is the case where you can have Rollins against somebody like a Wade Barrett and Ambrose interferes, costing Seth Rollins, which gives Wade Barrett a win over the champ, which is only adding to his momentum regardless of how he gets the finish. And I feel like there's not enough of that going on. And you're at a stage now where like they've done that a wee bit, where you've got like Heath Slater's got a win over Seth Rollins, who was the champ, but then nothing gets done with it. So what was the point in giving him that, other than just for a cheap pop on the night?
I feel like I'm not too sure about if they had the two titles, but see, definitely if they had the brand split with a title in each show, you'd certainly be looking at I'd assume Bray Wyatt would be champion by now. Ambrose would have had a title run. More than confident Roman Reigns would have been his champion and probably had a decent reign already. Probably even Rusev as well. I just feel the feud you're getting now stuck in the mid card on Raw between, we say mid card just because of the title, between Owens and Cena would probably be the World Heavyweight Championship feud on SmackDown. I just feel they're missing a trick there. Right now you've only maybe got 3 or 4 guys that are like big. If you've got 2 rosters, you get 3 or 4 guys on one show, 3 or 4 guys on another show. It just makes much more perfect sense. So then, when you get into a pay-per-view, instead of you getting in saying, "Oh, great, it's Rollins against Lesnar," there's maybe another couple of big matches. There's nothing really at stake. If you're adding that second brand, there's a World Heavyweight Championship match. It's pretty big, and it's 2 really good guys going at it. I'm really looking forward to that. There's that added pressure on the line. And I just feel they're missing the trick. They're just... They could easily have it that way where 2 of the guys end up on SmackDown, intense feuds, like SmackDown's kind of miss it. It's a must-see. And it's just a case of, there's these 2 guys are fighting on SmackDown. There's nothing in the line. It's just a rematch for Raw, which was a rematch for SmackDown the week before.
And that's just, it's so repetitive that it's like that so often that it's why you don't watch SmackDown. Anyway, moving on. We had the primetime players against the Ascension. And despite initial impression, it wasn't quite a squash. Although the Ascension did job out. A shame for them. Just never going to get any momentum at this stage now. Although there's always a chance they could come out of nowhere, kind of like the primetime players did themselves. Really enjoyed that they'd done the whole Titus O'Neil thing at the start of the match, with him being the daddy year and stuff like that. With whatever organisation organised that, I've no idea. But no, that was good, and then got a cheer for the crowd. I mean, the crowd's already behind Titus anyway, so that only added to it. In the match itself, I thought Darren Young stepped up a wee bit. Definitely upped his game, trying to interact with the audience as well. I thought the Ascension were fine as well. I thought they played their heel part perfectly. Some stuff where I thought like you could have been dirtier with that or whatever, but not really any complaints. Just a quick match to put over the fact that the primetime players are the champions. I thought we'd have maybe got one interaction at that point with the New Day, but obviously that came later in the show. Just kind of feels like it's actually indicative of what we were speaking about just before. Like, this is the kind of thing where they'll have a match against the Ascension on Raw and win, no bother. Then they'll probably rematch on SmackDown and lose because the New Day will interfere. It's kind of it reeks of that kind of booking. Just too much 50-50 booking in the WWE for my liking. But I mean, it was good to see the primetime players get a win on Raw and look impressive doing so. But again, just a shame that their opponents, like, you didn't expect them to win, so it kind of takes away from the victory for the primetime players.
I think the one thing straight away that made you think, primetime players are winning, Ascension are already in the ring. So instantly you take away their, it's an alright entrance, it's a pretty good entrance and it kind of builds up to what they are. But exactly what you say there, just a match to make the primetime players look good. One small thing I did like was Victor saying who's the best dad now or something along that line.
Who's the daddy now?
To Titus. But I mean, it's just small things like that. And I mean, they're the champions now, so they'll need a couple of wins. I say just a shame that apart from the 2 teams that are going for the title, everybody else is considered pretty much jobbers. Just
irrelevant, to be honest.
And if they're not jobbers, they're
the Lucha Dragons.
They're protected and they're on superstars in the case of the likes of Harper and Rowan as well. But I just think, apart from the top 2 teams at the moment, there's really nothing to get overly excited about because, as you say, Lucha Dragons, it's kind of stop-start. When it's like they're not doing anything wrong, you just don't see them.
They're just not doing anything.
And it's just all the time's been allocated to the New Day, and for every reason so. They're absolutely fantastic. And primetime players who, we've said it most of the podcasts we've done, they're slowly getting over, and it's a great opportunity for them. I'd just maybe like to see another feud within the division, highlighted on Raw, saying, right, number 1 contendership between these 2, and then the winners face the winners of the match at the pay-per-view. But for what it is, Titus O'Neil's looking strong, Darren Young's slowly getting over with the audience, and I just hope they can keep improving.
Totally fine with him. This is another thing we are booking wise that it kind of annoyed me. So after this we had Sheamus and Reigns, right? But skip that now. we then had Neville against Kofi. Obviously, last week, Neville scored the pinfall in the 6-man tag match with the Primetime Players against the New Day. So obviously that's following on for that. Fine, that's cool. Then we had the shenanigans with the New Day sort of being a bit boisterous at ringside, so Primetime Players come out. Eventually everybody on the outside gets sent to the back and Neville gets the win. That was cool, good for Neville. Storyline wise, don't really see where it's going. I mean, the tag titles are going to be on the line, so unless they're going to have Neville against somebody for the New Day in a separate match. But it seems irrelevant. The point here that annoyed me is clearly they're behind Neville, so they want Neville to look strong. And this is where the storylines are crossing over, which is what I like, but it was well done. The thing I didn't like was Primetime Players come down to the ringside, do nothing, and then get sent to the back. So why does that not happen all the time? Storyline inconsistencies there. Just generally a poor decision for them to put that in there. Especially when they've got, after the Primetime Players match, on look at the things they put on YouTube after Raw, they've got the Primetime Players being interviewed by, I think it was Jojo maybe, I don't know, backstage. So that's cool. So why do you not do that after the match, put that on Raw, and then that's where they interact with the New Day? And then that means Neville can just have a match with somebody. Even if it is Kofi Kingston, you can just have him have the match, win, and that storyline's already dealt with earlier in the show instead of having to fling it all together and distracting from the match. So instead of coming away going, oh, Neville won, that was good, you're like, oh, those goddamn New Day, what they like. It's just, I can understand why they done it, but I think it's quite obvious that they're trying to push Neville, but I don't think it looks as good when all you're taking away from the match is, oh, there was shenanigans involving the New Day and the Primetime Players. Oh, Neville had his cool finish as well. Whereas Neville against Kofi Kingston should be an outstanding match. But for the time given, it was just outside interference until the last 2 minutes of the match, which detracted from the general impression you get from Neville when he's in the ring. That's just me totally nitpicking, overly nitpicking. It just feels as if their shows could be structured so much better than they are.
I remember you saying right before the match starts saying this should be a good one. And what you've just said, that literally it should have been a good match, but there was too much stuff that just took it away from the match and hampered it, in my opinion.
That's the thing, just because I'd totally forgot like they would continue on for last week. Because also he came out and then I didn't know who he was fighting. Then Kofi comes out and then I'm like, oh wait, there's going to be shenanigans. So they just totally distracted from what could have been a great match.
I've got a lot of negatives as well, but I'll start with a positive, because obviously power of positivity and stuff like that. But Xavier Woods again on the outside, fantastic. Give the guy a megaphone like they were saying on commentary. I thought, it was great. Another reference to the Titus O'Neil being Fire of the Year thing, despite him not even being there. But again, continues the feud. What I get for the booking at the moment is I've got a feeling we do see Neville against Kofi at Battleground, but I think we go with Primetime Players against Woods and Big E, where again it's Xavier, who's obviously the least over of the three guys, because obviously
it's the least time on the roster, yeah. That's it.
And I think that's how they get the win, basically, over the 3 against 2 advantage. But again, the little bits say outside interference, like Primetime Players come down. If it was a heel ref, I could understand why he sent them back, but again, they don't do nothing. Doesn't make sense. Why do you send the New Day back? They haven't actually touched them. They're just laughing at them. That happens all the time. That's what heel managers do. I could understand it if it was a case of going back years and years ago where somebody's went off the ropes and Mr. Fuji's pulled their leg or something like that, but you don't get any of that anymore. And I'm like, so we're sending people back for effectively laughing at somebody? And just... How many times just over the years has wrestlers or managers been outside giving abuse and nothing? It's just, I'm going to drop it for the first time today, it's WWE logic.
Yes, that's all it is.
But like I can understand it carries on 2 storylines, but I just feel, I think they want to keep highlighting Neville is obviously this amazing finisher and stuff like that, Evan Bourne, but a wee bit better. But they just don't have anywhere for him to go, and they just think, well, Kofi's good at making people look good. And he's also in a feud where it's 3 against 2. But so let's just put him in with there and maybe highlighting that Neville's so good, some of that can come on to Titus and Darn. I think it just needs to do for just now, I think, because I don't really see anybody else in the roster that Neville can really get into a programme with.
I know, since they sort of a bit butchered the apparent feud with Bo Dallas very, very quickly. I think that could have been great on the main roster. Just a shame that they've never given Bo Dallas any time, and that shows you what happens now.
Has he been on television since that match at the pay-per-view, actually?
I think he was on the Raw after it, but not since then. I'm pretty sure he jobbed to somebody as well at some point, but just it shows you that's the biggest consequence of short-term booking is then down the line you get to a point when you've got no one to make your baby faces look good. And that's what happens with especially when they do this 50-50 booking. And that's why I've totally got the fear about Bray Wyatt getting into this feud with Roman Reigns. Nice little segue anyway. Because obviously in between these two segments it was Roman Reigns against Sheamus. Sheamus' entrance didn't look great.
They botched it badly. I was absolutely raging at this. I did say that to you at the time. They just to get the lighting and timing awful. It was just so wrong.
Anyway then, but what I did like was, continue with the entrances, Reigns comes down and Sheamus is in his face straight away and refuses to let him do his signature wee climbing up on the top rope and sticking his arms in there, and doesn't let him do that. It gets right in his face. Properly heelish. Then the match starts and just whatever usual shite, just hitting each other as hard as they can, it was actually no bad, to be honest, but I just felt as if they went to the well too many times with Sheamus controlling from behind and attacking Reigns' back, his lower back and that, applying the cloverleaf. That was cool. But it always resulting in Roman Reigns just getting his own back and slinging the elbows. It felt like they went through the motion too many times with the same thing. The whole match was just basically, that was it. Sheamus attacking Reigns' lower back, going for the cloverleaf, going back to the back, going for the cloverleaf, getting it locked in, then going back to the back. But I mean, it was fine for the setup to the finish to the match, obviously. And I'm pleased that we're seeing more of this kind of thing for Bray Wyatt. More of the mind games. And the consequence of this is it's letting you discover who Roman Reigns is as a character as well, as opposed to just, I'm this Samoan guy, which is what his character had been until now.
Well, I'll start again with a few positives for a change. I mean, I think with the match, we did feel if there was somebody that was going to elevate Roman Reigns to the next level, it would be somebody like Sheamus. And I feel had they structured the match differently, I think these two could bring out a very good brawl. Because I say Sheamus is great in the ring, and I think he's a lot better when he plays the heel and in control of the match. Don't like the fact that a lot of Roman Reigns is kind of like never give up attitude. It is really kind of a small wee bit of John Cena light.
It's very much the way he sells is very John Cena. It's just he registers something on Impact and then doesn't sell it thereafter. That's kind of annoying, especially against a brute like Sheamus.
I mean, hopefully, if they get a bit of time together, maybe I think down the line, I think they will work a good program, and hopefully, maybe they're saving their best for a pay-per-view match. But I can only add into what you said there. The good thing I like about this Bray Wyatt Roman Reigns program is it's going to give us a chance to properly get into both characters. And as you said with Roman Reigns, he has just been this Samoan guy. I think that's probably the reason why myself personally, I've never been able to connect with Roman Reigns. It's like, why should I care about Roman Reigns? That was probably the first segment, this and last week's. I thought, so this is what Roman Reigns is actually about. This is his character. Maybe I can slowly start to understand that he's got some weaknesses and that's what he's got to overcome.
You can sympathise for the guy.
I can get behind him. I think he does need to change the theme song button, the entrance. I think it's still, you're just thinking it's the Shield. I think we need something that's just, we don't want the Shield. We want to see what Roman Reigns is. Just give a song that's Roman Reigns. You know what I mean? Ambrose comes out, you don't think he's Shield theme anymore with me. Seth Rollins, still don't think of the Shield anymore. I just feel, just take him away for that and just give us the proper Roman Reigns character that everybody can connect with. But, good segment. So makes Sheamus look really strong by getting the victory via count out, although I don't know if they actually announced that Sheamus was the winner. Bray Wyatt, that's what they need. They need some segments where he's getting into people's heads and all that, instead of just being the Riddler every week. There is kind of a little bit of sense to it. fair enough, he is just spouting a kind of nursery rhyme, but at the same time, it is what it is regarding Reigns' daughter and whatnot.
And that's the one criticism I really seen of it is like, just people going, oh well, sarcastically, glad to see that Bray Wyatt's really studied Roman Reigns' daughter, because he's also just repeated that thing for the advert twice, and it's like, but no one knows anything about Roman Reigns' daughter, and that's the only thing they can relate to her, so that's what you need to go with going forward. I did like it. The thing I didn't like was like how Roman Reigns was so gullible, but then again that adds to his character as well, that they don't even show that it is his daughter on the screen or that, and he's like, oh, he's got my daughter, so I better run back and get him. It's like, just seems a bit as if he's a bit stupid, and it makes the heel look smart, but you're hoping it's the other way around usually. Don't want your baby faces to look stupid, and I thought Roman Reigns looked a bit stupid there when he runs backstage, and it's like Bray Wyatt isn't there in this room, and it's like, firstly, how did they find the room so quickly? You know what I mean? It's just, that's shockingly. Secondly, just the whole thing of, alright, so it was like he's running through the corridors and he goes in one door, he opens one door, and then he's like, oh well, oh wait, I hear Bray Wyatt singing and Bray Wyatt's not there, and it was creepy, and that was the whole point in it. It seemed a bit, it just looked, for a quote unquote sport, an entertainment programme, it was very, very fake looking. That's the one thing I didn't like about it.
Actually, the fact you mentioned that there, what the first thing I thought was very fake looking was when he's running up the ramp. Doesn't sell any injuries. He's just been in a grilling match with Sheamus. Pretty good job. Now we're talking like about Rollins having a lot of segments. Why not have a couple of segments where Reigns is checking various different rooms, can't find his daughter, and he's just freaking out completely, and then that adds to getting a little bit of his character. And it's not just directing all the time to one programme, you're getting some time to this programme as well. And then when he eventually does find the room, that's when you get your payoff. So you're leading up all through the show. You can maybe have like 4 segments for the show, having like one every hour and whatnot, and he's freaking out, he's really getting para, he's maybe bumping into superstars backstage. You know, and again, you're getting other guys' screen time as well. I didn't like the room it was in.
Aye.
For the kind of creepy places you see Bray Wyatt, and then you just see him in like a random room where it just looked very, very cheap in my opinion.
I almost felt like he was going to get into a room, and then it was that, and then the camera would pan and it was going to be in catering or something like that. Like, that's what it felt like. It was a bit dodgy looking, but
it's one of the ones you're just expecting some of the WWE posters in the background for films in it. But no, I mean, apart from that, I just feel that's what I would have personally done, you know, just to give a bit more suspense and build it along the show. So you could have maybe cut one of the Seth Rollins promos out and or backstage segments out, allocated it to this, allocated maybe 2 minutes off another match.
Or just 2 minutes off of the match with Sheamus, know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because the match didn't really do anything enough. It still makes Sheamus look strong because he dominated for the majority of the time they were in the ring. So
I think it's a good step in the right direction for where they want Bray Wyatt's character to be, a bit creepy. Only worry is, I feel at the end of this feud, both guys kind of need a win, because remember, this is Bray Wyatt, that guy that Roman Reigns beat after he'd beat 2 guys already and was injured. So I think hopefully over the next 3 weeks they really need to build the mind games up, but at the same time give Bray some victories as well, so you get a bigger payoff with Roman Reigns.
Again, it's just the short-sightedness of WWE's booking, and it's like it's when you really understand where like the script for a Raw isn't finished until like hours before the Raw, an hour before the Raw's ready to go on air, and you get things like Superman Roman Reigns, or after tonight's it's Terminator Roman Reigns dominating 3 guys easily on a Raw, and then a week later Bray Wyatt is on the screen, and then that's at SmackDown, also Bray Wyatt's on the screen, and then Reigns is caught with a pro kick out anywhere, and he's pinned easily. Like, you can't have both characters at the same time. It's one of the things. WWE logic, that's it. And I've just got this fear that Bray Wyatt's going to lose again, and it just leaves him basically on the edge of being irrelevant, to be honest. they've wasted a great character. This is like, imagine they'd booked Undertaker in 1991 like this. Make a massive debut in that, dominate, and let's not forget, Undertaker lost his debut, right? You get yourself eliminated in the Survivor Series match with Ted DiBiase's team, right? But it made a massive impact. Went on an unbeaten streak for over a year, beats Hulk Hogan for the title, then loses it back to Hogan, right? But that's a great build of a character, whereas in such a unique character. Whereas now it's like Bray Wyatt, he's just a weirdo. He's no this person that should be feared. He's just a bit of a weirdo, and it's nowhere a character like his should be at this stage.
So I feel like similar to Undertaker, he shouldn't be getting pinned so early on. If he is going to lose disqualifications, countouts, I just feel for what they want him to be, which they pretty much have said they want him to be the next Undertaker type character, he just needs far more protective booking. I think if he's going to be still struggling and losing matches, at least have some sort of, I bet to get back to a previous angle and stuff like that, but some sort of entourage again, bring back some sort of family, because it just kind of adds to that character, and I just think he needs a hell of a lot more protection. It's fair enough you're giving Roman Reigns the protection to be the main guy, but the main guy needs someone to make him the main guy, and that is an obstacle that should not be beaten, and he fear cannot be beaten, and that's what Bray Wyatt should have been established as. Basically,
they're trying to get Roman Reigns to the top of the ladder, but they've taken away most of the rungs. That's essentially what they've done here. They've handicapped Roman Reigns for getting to the top of the mountain as quickly as he can, and it's a shame, because it means like you've got nobody in the lower card, right? You've got nobody that can generate a reaction outside of Zack Ryder, right? Then you slowly climb up and you're getting to like your tag teams and that. And your tag teams, you've got a couple that are no bad, the rest of them are nowhere. And then you move on and you've got like your Dolph Zigglers who are alright. Doesn't get a massive reaction, let's be honest. Compared to the reactions he was getting 2.5 years ago, nothing like it. Around the same, you've got guys like Rusev who, fair enough, he's injured now, but you feel like they've missed a trick with him as well. And then even your main event guys, like there seems to be a big clump that are main event, because there's such a small amount of guys actually featured on Raw, and it just feels like they're all like, they're obviously their characters aren't the same, but because they're booked very near identical to each other, you can't separate them, and that's the biggest issue I've got with all of this.
And that's why you kind of think with all these kind of guys that are so high up the ladder and that, you'd think, why have we not got a brand split? Because then it gives 4 main eventers to one show, 4 main eventers to the other show. Then when it comes to your pay-per-view, it feels just like a supercard effectively.
It's just a shame. So it's, moving on anyway. Talking to Zack Ryder, he had an appearance on Raw. He's been on Raw more often recently, which is obviously good for him. Now officially in a tag team with Mojo Rawley and... Is it Mojo? Aye, Mojo Rawley and NXT.
Stay hyped.
Aye, the Hype Brothers, as they're called, or Hype Bros. That's a good thing for him, I think. But good that he's on Raw, still gets a reaction to his signature spots and that. Good to see Barrett get a solid win, but it's quite clear that he's going forward with R-Truth. Maybe they'll even get a match on the pay-per-view, although I doubt it. Just he's somebody that seems to be... He's probably the biggest misuse of talent on the show at this point in time. There's really nothing to say. He should be doing much more than he's doing just now, especially after winning King of the Ring.
Is it bad that actually, when the two of them came out, I actually expected Zack Ryder to win? That's bad, I expected some sort of shenanigans with R-Truth to distract Barrett to give Ryder the victory. But it's good to see Zack on television. I think they're utilising the fact that he still does get a good reaction from the crowd, but he is effectively still going to be jobbing out. Looks Barrett look a bit stronger, gets him a little bit of momentum, which he needs. But again, he's stuck in some sort of comedy filler. He just can't get away from R-Truth. Some filler segment and feud with him. And as you say, it's a shame. He should have had the title in 2010. Probably should have had the World Heavyweight Champion when he went to SmackDown as well. And that get done, then a couple other pushes done by injuries, and it's just an absolute shame. The guy's in the best shape of his career, and this is probably the most he's jobbed in his career as well, which is just a travesty. The guy, he's got the look, you know what I mean? Mike's skills are fantastic in the ring. He's okay, he'll do a job, but they just don't have faith in him.
I just feel like it totally reeks of 2009 Kofi Kingston at this point, where, well, in fact, post 2009 Kofi Kingston, even, where you felt like he's had his time where he could have been the champ. It looked like that's where he was going to get to, or at least be in that discussion. And then he's just been nowhere ever since. Just, I mean, you look at probably the build to the 2011 Money in the Bank. And that's when he got the injury, obviously, the first injury he got. I think it was the 2011 Money in the Bank. And you're like, right, this guy's he's a definite for winning this. It doesn't happen. Kind of felt like Kofi Kingston and his feud with Randy Orton in 2009. And you're like, this guy's getting over, like the crowd love him, like this guy could be going towards the title, and then messes up on one Raw or something like that, then nothing ever, in fact, was it even Raw, was it Survivor Series or something like that? Nothing ever comes of the guy again, just perennial mid-carder, until the stuff with the New Day, obviously, where he's got a new lease of life. But no, I think he's definitely, he's the prototype of being lost in the shuffle at this point, Wade Barrett, and I think anybody in the roster out with Brock Lesnar, I think he's the guy that would be your best bet for your champion at this point, just because if they'd just wish they'd stuck with the bad news gimmick, turned him face, it'd have been so over. I think he's in the shape of his career. He looks like the guy you want as a champion. He's tall as fuck, so that gives him just a presence over so many people that he'd be fighting against, which they don't have at that end of the roster. So it's just something that's totally missing. Just a shame, to be honest. Hope he wins this feud against R-Truth and then he goes on to better things, but I wouldn't be too surprised if he doesn't.
I hate to bring it up for probably the third or fourth time in the podcast already, but again, someday if you had the brand split, would be perfect. You know, he'd be that guy that'd be, instead of languishing in pre-shows and, I wouldn't even say mid-card, I'd say lower mid-card at the moment, the way it is, the way people are being booked, that he could be on the cusp of the main event on, say, a SmackDown or something, or even if he's on Raw, could be that guy that's just pushing again with the main guys. And I feel, again, it's because of the way it is booked, the shows are booked, and there's so many main event guys that he's effectively lost in the shuffle, and he's not the guy that's pushing through. Definitely.
Anyway, moving on. For something that I had no notes about, we actually discussed that for some length. But one of the other highlights of the show was the John Cena Kevin Owens exchange. They didn't really say much, to be honest. Just sort of a continuation of what's been going on. Kevin Owens making clear that he doesn't care what anybody thinks of him. Great stuff for a heel to be saying. John Cena just portraying his messages again as he always does. But then once Kevin Owens came out, done his whole thing about you won't like me because I'm a foreigner, talking in French. Thought that was a great wee turn there. Then even more so when Cena fired back at him, I thought that's grade A Cena. That's Cena at the top of his game. Fires back in French, then in Chinese, like fluently as well. Although he seemed to put across that American was a language, but I don't think it is. But no, that was a great promo, and done well to finally set up the match at Battleground, confirming that it'll be for the US title. And I'm just anticipating a great build-up over the next couple of weeks on Raw.
So I can add to it really is just hopefully to continue the good promos against each other, because it really is money in my opinion. Despite it being his first language, it was very strange hearing Kevin Owens in French. It was like, because obviously I'd heard the podcast, it's like I never knew English until JR commentated, and that's how I learned. I'm like, alright, and then just seeing him do that was just weird. But I had a wee bit of fear they were going to go with don't tell me they're going with the foreigner against the US again, but thankfully it doesn't seem like that. That was just kind of like, it's just because who I'm. You don't like me because I'm French Canadian, you don't like me because I'm maybe a wee bit out of shape, you don't like me because of my size. But no, they covered all that, which was good. Obviously, as you discussed, Cena speaking French, Chinese. We found out after many years of learning Chinese, it was all for this promo.
That was it.
It was never for a big Chinese tour or anything. It was just purely for this promo. But now, the two of these guys together on the mic, they really do make you buy into this feud, and they make you anticipate the matches.
And it's just the depth of the stuff they've been saying as well, and the whole thing seems like, I just don't think you're a good person. Like, I don't think you're a nice guy. I think you're, what does he say? What they call him? He called him something. Call him a dirtbag or something like that. I think you're a dirtbag. Suckbag. That was, well, terrible. That was the other thing that I thought, you can't say you're a suckbag, then talk fluently in French and Chinese. That doesn't work. That's not a dynamic I'm cool with. But no, the other thing is, like, how, like, I know he definitely called him a dirtbag or something like that. It's like, yeah, human, like, you're not a great human, blah, blah, blah. And then that just means down the line, then when they do all the stuff they've got, Kevin Owens with his family, then he can turn babyface, and that stuff's all built in.
So that's what I don't get. Like, Cena's obviously saying, you're a nice person. It's like, he's made it perfectly honest. He's doing that stuff for his family. I think if everybody was in that position, they'd do it for their family as well. But I'm just loving how much of Kevin Owens are making it seem like it is actually Kevin Owens. And I just think he's nailed it in the main roster. The fact that anytime he's got a promo, delivers in the ring. He's been pretty good. Obviously, we kind of debate the false finishes and all that. NXT, he always seems to bring it. His gimmick on Twitter, or just him on Twitter, is just enhancing his character even more. It's like, it's funny, but at the same time, he's still playing the heel, and he's still sending abuse to people when necessary. And I just think he's nailed it. I think it's one of these feuds we can kind of look kind of short-sighted as well. It'll be interesting to see if Cena plays any interference in the Tokyo show. If they'll have any of that footage for the build-up towards Battleground. I'm really intrigued to see what they go with.
It will definitely be interesting, since it's obviously a WWE show, and it just happens that the NXT title will be on the line there. Moving on, Divas.
Best spot of all time?
Up there, definitely up there. Highlight of the match anyway, Tamina trying to get to Brie Bella, and it was the referee's fault, I think, to be quite honest. Tries to go out the road and ends up tripping up Tamina, and then sort of looking like, what did you want me to do? Like,
I think he should have just moved backwards and
exactly. It totally seemed like his fault. It was quite funny though. But I mean, the Bellas were like the baby faces here, and I'm like, why are we still going through this?
I think seeing a division where everybody's changing heel face every 2 weeks, having a heel versus heel matchup just fucks everything up. It's just like, what? It's as if we're kind of going with heels, tweeners, and Paige is the face here. It's like, I don't even know who the heel and who the tweener would be in this situation, but it's just like having three separate entities. Like, you get the Bellas, and obviously their alignment with Alicia Fox. You get Tamina and Naomi, who don't like Paige but don't like the Bellas. And you've got Paige going, this is my house over here, just on her own. I just, you know that way where it's like, you hope it's an NXT diva, but then when you see the shit that they're putting in storylines, you're like, what the fuck? You're like, no, play Charlotte, Sasha Banks, Bayley, etc. Stay in NXT at this point.
It feels like Bayley's like deliberately broke her arm. She's like, you're getting called up, and she's like, oh no, I've broke my arm. I can't get called up to the main roster.
I can't give hugs.
And then it's going to just end up being Emma and Natalia or something like that. Which I'd be fine with, but I mean, just unless they're bringing somebody new in, like.
So you want to give them a chance, and in the ring you'll give them as much a chance as possible, but the storylines are. The booking just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't.
I think I've definitely lost any hope for Tamina. Not because of the botch of that, but in the match she looked terrible. She didn't look great at all. Then again, that was her being in the ring with Nikki Bella mainly. So
I still maintain she's somebody that needed a bit of time in NXT when she came back for injury. Just even if it was the same as like Zack Ryder, he's had 2 months in NXT. Probably looks a lot better than he has done recently. And I had just to get back into the swing of things. Dare I say you're training with a better level of wrestler, and stuff like that in NXT. You know,
But you're actually training. That's the thing. You're training.
I just felt it's something they maybe should have went with Tamina. Maybe it's not possible because obviously she's a single mother and whatnot. But I think it's something they should have probably went down. But they just they've got such an investment in her. But I feel for the bodyguard role, she's struggling recently.
Aye, she's no great. Naomi has totally went off the boil as well, because it's clear that everyone's about the Bellas, and I mean, and fair enough, they're getting a reaction for the crowd, right? But when you're the only divas consistently on TV every week, you're going to get a reaction. It's as simple as that. You can't consistently be on television for 7 minutes every week, 5 minutes, whatever it is every week, and not get a reaction. I mean,
see the thing I don't get with the Bellas is obviously WWE portrays that the superstars and divas as role models. Then why would you have two folk like that as your mainstays in the division? You know, two complete, let's be honest, bimbos. They've got fake everything. They've got pretty much everything because they've gotten it because of who they're
well, just Nikki Bella.
Aye,
I can't really say that about Brie, but
the likes of like Paige, like you can understand why they'd go with Paige. It's like she's different, so that's meaning when say like the wee lassies that are grown up look to Paige and go, well, I can be different too, and just things like that, and it doesn't make sense.
Aye, it's just. And here's the thing as well, I don't even think that Nikki Bella is that attractive, to be quite honest. And it annoys me that they portray her as such, like, I don't even know, like, all of a sudden you've got big tits and you're attractive now. Like, when your whole thing before was that you were attractive because you were twins. Even enough, they're obviously good looking lassies, but they're nowhere near on the level of like a Trish Stratus, or a Stacey Keibler, or a Tori Wilson, you know what I mean? So, or a Maurice even. So I don't get it. I really don't.
I'm actually at the stage now where like I actually think the Divas division misses someone like a Maurice, because like fair enough, she wasn't the greatest wrestler, but you know she was
a very defined character.
She was a fantastic character. She made you want to hate her just with her whole kind of like, oh, I'm much better than you, like, and as you say, she was absolutely.
I don't remember her talking. I don't remember her talking. I just remember looking at her. Can't I? That's the male brain, that's what that is.
It's her few times she done her wee sign thing where she just went, no, just talk to the hand or whatever, but no, she was just the perfect character, and I just feel WWE kind of misses something like that.
Definitely. Anyway, hope that gets better. I'm assuming that there's going to be something in the meantime. Like, are they going to, because obviously Paige wasn't there this week because they've got Tough Enough on Tuesday, and obviously there's a lot of prep since it's the first episode. Hoping she'll be on some of the Raws before the pay-per-view though, if they're going to go that way with a match. But I'm assuming that they end up with possibly a 6-diva tag match if they're going to have the Bellas with Alicia Fox. But anyway, I'm just a bit giving up on them.
I don't know what I think now, because like you say, obviously she's doing Tough Enough. Is that, if that's the case, it's going to be every week and she's not going to be available for Raw? Then that just...
Oh no, I just think that she's not available this week because it's the first week. Because obviously they'll need to do a lot of pre-production stuff. Whereas once you've done it and you know everything that's going to happen, it'll be a bit easier to do the show.
Because if it was every other week and she wasn't on television, it'd just completely fuck up just everything in the Divas division, because you'd have literally no main face.
Exactly. Anyway, moving on, we'll go to Dolph Ziggler against Adam Rose, which was the main event of the show. Don't really see this going anywhere. Obviously, it was actually quite like the dynamic of what Adam Rose and Rosa were doing. Adam Rose actually got to cut basically a main event promo. Thought it was alright. Just not a fan of anybody being with Rosa Mendes. Ziggler was with Lana, just doing the same stick they've been doing week upon week. The match was fine for what it was. It wasn't a main event match at all though. Ziggler obviously gets the win, which I really liked, the super kick counter for the axe handle off the top rope with Adam Rose. That was a nice enough way to finish the match. Then Lana came in and she almost let her hair down, and I think that's going to be a massive pop on its own, just Lana letting her hair down. But really all this was to do was to build up to showing Rusev backstage losing the plot a wee bit and teasing an alignment with Summer Rae.
I thought it was weird seeing Adam Rose in the main event first and foremost, But I mean, I did congratulate. I mean, fair play, It's not the main event kind of slot you kind of want, but it's still getting to be that last match on television. Like yourself, I don't agree with everything that goes with Rosa Mendes, but I feel they were just portraying, obviously, they're a couple together in a storyline to try to go and say, well, used to a couple, but we're the better couple. And I just think that was highlighting that with a kind of Joey Ryan and Candice rip-off with a lollipop and that. But it was what it was, It was basically to put Ziggler and Lana over. Still, though, Lana's getting the chance over Ziggler. So I feel, first of all, it was hampering Rusev, and it's starting to hamper Ziggler, which could be a shame. But it is what it is. Great that the match did end with a zigzag. It gives you Ziggler that kind of finisher out of nowhere with the super kick. Obviously, building that kind of real relationship up with Lana and Ziggler post-match. Backstage, I'm alright with this Rusev with Summer Rae. I feel they've tried it with a few guys. It's no work, but as we discussed a few weeks ago in the podcast, some of the divas that really got over were not actual wrestling to start with. It was in these kind of feuds, and maybe they see that as a way, right, we can elevate Lana, so when she actually learns to wrestle or whatever, she can jump straight into the title feuds, and it's the same with Summer Rae. And I feel...
And Summer Rae's actually pretty competent in the ring already, so...
Mm-hmm. I feel she's somebody that just... Not even the right character, just needs the right storyline, because she's never had that consistent storyline. Realistically, she never really should have split up for Fandango to start with, but no, it's a great opportunity for her, and be interesting to see how she does, and how the relationship develops between her and Rusev.
Definitely will be interesting. I don't think it will work the way it worked with Lana, but you never know. Summer Rae's obviously, she's got the body to carry it off, not really get the face. But I mean, it'll be interesting enough to see what happens. Just as long as we end up with Rusev back wrestling sooner rather than later. I really do enjoy his whole tracksuit gimmick though, constantly wearing their tracksuits. I really do enjoy that. It makes a difference when every other person you see in like that's out with their wrestling attires just in like a suit or are in jeans and a t-shirt, and he's just constantly wearing this Bulgaria tracksuit. I'm really into it.
Well, it gives them that kind of unique character, because you say if everybody's just wearing the same stuff, they're all kind of the same. When you said when Ryback was doing street clothes, it made him stand out a bit more.
It looked massive.
You know what I mean? I feel like it's the same with Rusev. Maybe it's playing to the fact like he's not wearing a suit. Maybe it's just like he's European. He's obviously got a European wrestling or whatever background, and that's where they've taken the tracksuit kind of idea from. But I feel, do you know how long he's out for at all? Has that ever been mentioned?
No, they don't know. They've never said.
Never said. But I think when him and Ziggler do eventually clash, it should hopefully have some good matches. Interesting to see.
It'd be great if it was SummerSlam as well. And the last thing for Raw, we had Ryback against Mark Henry, which I thought was a good opponent for him. A nice wee throwback to obviously WrestleMania and things like that. The match was decent for what it was. I actually missed the ending. I missed it, and when I come back to it, it was just Big Show berating Mark Henry post match. So obviously Ryback get the win there. Big Show in commentary, it was alright. Just felt like he couldn't really be bothered. That's how it came across, and it was just. But it did alright to put across like what's the Miz doing, getting involved in our stuff. Like he needs to stay away and keep yourself to yourself. I'm the one that's going for the title, etc., etc. But mostly it was just great to see the backstage segment post match as well, and I've missed the backstage scuffles where somebody inevitably gets flung into random metal pipes. That's always been a classic backstage.
I think this Big Show obviously was just portraying that he is the heel. He's a heel that hates another heel in the case of the Miz, and obviously wants the title off of Ryback. Mark Henry's one of the guys. I'm not actually sure what his placement is. 1 week he's face, 1 week he's heel, and it's still kind of confusing me. But it seemed like the Big Show was in a position here where he was just trying to egg Mark Henry on, get him to try and channel his inner, shall we say, Hall of Pain, bring that back. He's like, you know what you're capable of, Mark Henry? You can destroy this guy. What you know been able to do it for? And then obviously at the end, doesn't happen. Ryback gets the win. Big Show gets pissed, berates Mark Henry. then you get the whole segment backstage where just talking about you think you're the big guy and all that, no, you're just an old guy or whatever, and then says you can't do anything, and then Big Show, for once, actually looks quite dominant and quite strong. And just starts. I don't think the kicks were the most deadliest kicks in the world. It's like
definitely not.
But no, it was all right. You know, it was making Big Show look like he's a man, and hopefully, if we get another couple of weeks of that, then maybe either Ryback shows an amazing feat of strength, or I actually do have a feeling if in the triple threat match, I think Miz weasels it with the title somehow.
I think the best thing would be to keep the title on Ryback at this point, because he's only getting more over as every week passes. You're getting to know more about the guy. Like I like the bit of the promo bit about how he was defending the title. He never mentioned that it was a house show, but it was a house show in Las Vegas, and that his parents, who had been split up for 15 years, were there to see him. It's the first time they'd been together since, whatever. And that was really good insight to the character. Then the whole thing of Big Show going well, I'm a big man, you're a little boy type thing. And Ryback's just like, that's pish, mate. Then have a wee bit of a kerfuffle. It was decent. And I liked that Ryback came out on top as well. Obviously, Miz was missing because he's doing something to do with Tough Enough as well. Tough Talk, which I'm assuming something on the network after Tough Enough, which is obviously on this evening as we record this. Probably leave that till the day after, to be quite honest. Can't bother staying up to you on time to watch that. But no, again, that's another example of the Miz getting utilised purely for how good he is on the microphone. Obviously getting another network thing with this Tough Enough. So just hope he's back on Raw as well to continue this feud.
Do you ever think, right, with all the kind of segments they get and all the shows he gets to host and all that, they'd maybe push him back to the main event? Because then you could say, well, this is your WWE champion hosting this show, or your guy that is going to be competing for the title. Maybe if he can't do, because obviously your champion has to do obviously TV appearances and that, but if he's hosting stuff, saying maybe this is your challenger and getting him back in the title scene and that, or do you think because he's doing this much stuff, that's why he's kind of just been restricted to the IC division and staying there? I
think it's the latter. I mean, of the guys who, if you were to write a list of guys who are on Raw 9 times out of 10, he would probably be one of the guys on it. But then when you look at it, he's probably not even on that many. He's probably on maybe 7 out of 10, because he probably, the last couple of years, he's at least missed. Well, obviously there was the extended time away done the Christmas film last year. He done that Marine film as well. He's just done another film there now. So all in the last couple of years, he's probably missed maybe 12 Raws or something like that, which is more than you would have expected for a guy that's there quite often. I mean, when he returned at, what pay-per-view did they return at? Christ, can't even remember. But he returned and he was a babyface and all that, and it was actually quite a big deal because he'd been away so long. But I think he's one of those guys that he becomes really mundane when you see him week after week doing the same thing. So stuff like this could maybe actually be good for him when he's away every other week, but I don't see him getting pushed back to the title scene, just purely because there's so many younger guys that they're trying to bring through. But I definitely think he can be a stepping stone heel to get over baby faces if they choose to use him like that.
That's a good point. Very good point. Be interesting to see what the future holds, and looking forward to the match. Interesting to see, how they try and make the Miz look strong, if they will go for the whole try and weasel a victory angle.
Interesting, especially just how they develop it. I think it will definitely be continuing this, the story they could go with is, well, I was thinking maybe the Miz being the guy who's he's between the rock and a hard place, but he's a villain, so it doesn't really work. Just the fact that you've got Ryback in this 2-on-1 situation, but then Ryback's got a history winning 2-on-1 matches, never mind triple threats, so you think it'd play into his hands. Just interesting to see how it pans out. Anyway, I think that's enough for Raw this week. Nearly an hour, 10 an hour, 14, that is not bad. Anyway, so I guess we'll move on to our first ever listener question, which is from Liam McHugh, or Luca, we call him Luca, we'll say Luca, whose question to us was just essentially, how do we think in fact, I'll just read it. He just said he'd be interested to hear our thoughts on how the internet has impacted wrestling, the availability of dirt sheets online, and pretty much the lack of surprises, and obviously being able to find out about pre-tapes before they actually appear on television. But this is basically, we've not really watched, well, I watched wrestling for years before looking on the internet when I was younger, obviously, but they've always been around. They've existed since before we were born, so dirt sheets have always been there. Internet's pretty much been there the entirety of us watching wrestling, so it seems pretty much normal, I think, to us.
Like, I think there was one of the wrestling forums that posted up by like, everybody's bitching about how it is now, and somebody had found an archive of a forum for like 2000, and it was like, The Rock's it's the same stuff every week. It's all these comedy things and all that. It's just he's just a joke. But I don't know. It does ruin surprises, but I think some of them you take with a pinch of salt. You know, it's like, this surprise is going to happen. You're like, nah, it's never going to happen. And then when it does happen, you're like, oh shit, it really did happen. But I think what today is, like, if you're not really like looking for any spoilers and stuff like that, like I personally, before the Rumble, stay away as much as possible. Obviously, I'm an avid reader. I tend to stick to the forums. I like to see people's opinions rather
as opposed to insider
stuff. To see how other people think what's going to happen in that. So the only thing I'll maybe look at is in terms of potential signees, because let's be honest now, any signee goes to NXT, and you know the only time it's going to be an element of surprise is when it's somebody for NXT debuting. You know, like when Sami Zayn debuted again, I don't think it would be Sami Zayn, and it was insane on the main roster. But the only stuff I look for insider stuff is really who's getting tryouts, who WWE's potentially looking at. Apart from that.
I personally don't really read them. The only things I'll do is occasionally I'll get like old Observer articles and stuff like that, which is always quite interesting, just like looking back at stuff as opposed to going forward, because it all seems very, very nitpicky and bitchy these days, like a lot of the insider stuff you hear or you read even. But I do feel as if that's been the biggest negative, and that's probably why we've got to a stage where there is no massive forward planning. And I mean, it's at a stage where, like, because of TNA's situation, they're having to tape 6 weeks of television up to Slammiversary, which is their B pay-per-view, their second biggest pay-per-view even. So, like, there's not really any surprises going into that pay-per-view. And I was reading that there's possibly even stuff getting taped that will occur after Slammiversary. So I don't really know. But I mean, that would be fine if you weren't able to access it on the internet. And then because it's so easily available, not even on dirt sheets, just on Twitter and things like that, you find out stuff that you don't really like inadvertently just because it's on your timeline. And that's probably more of an impact now than anything is Twitter. When you've got but then that's always good for sort of a double bluffing as well. Twitter, I find that's really good. Jericho's been great at it for years. Just like, nah, I'm not coming back. And then it's like number 2 entrant in the Royal Rumble. I think the biggest thing that has happened as a circumstance is when you're surprised, you're really surprised by something. And I mean, but if it's something really big, it doesn't ruin the surprise. I mean, when Lesnar came back 3 years ago, nobody thought he was actually going to come back. And then he appears on Raw, and you're like, holy shit, this is... So, I don't know, it's a negative in some aspects, but obviously without the internet, wrestling wouldn't be as big as it is. So, and it wouldn't be as globalised as it is either. I mean, we're at the stage now where you can access everything that New Japan's ever done by paying a tenner a month for something like that, maybe not even a tenner. It's insane. But the dirt sheets themselves are usually always take everything with a pinch of salt anyway, as you said.
So the only other things I'll maybe read on the internet is kind of guys with injuries, see like how severe they are, but you're tending to get the kind of reports now from WWE themselves. Apart from that, I'll maybe have a look and see who's facing each other in house show matches, just to see how different stuff is. It usually has the same feuds, but you'll sometimes get different matchups. So I'd be quite interested to see that. But the other advantage...
Actually, sorry, as you mentioned that's a big thing as well, because obviously back in the day, that's what would happen. Like, a feud would be happening on house shows before it happened on the main roster, or like feuds would happen on house shows that never even graced the main roster. So, but at least you actually find out that stuff as well now, as opposed to... And that can sometimes spoil the upcoming feuds, because that's always the thing, like, oh well, they're going forward with this feud because in 2 months' time, so-and-so's booked to wrestle on house shows. Like, that's a slight downside as well.
Right, getting back to you mentioning like New Japan and stuff like that, again, with all the dirt sheets and all that, if you're somebody over here who we don't have great access to New Japan stuff like that, or even Lucha Underground or anything like that, like dirt sheets and that will have the results available for you. So say you want to see what happened at a non-televised event, or an event we can't see or won't see for months in Japan, and you want to know how Okada did or Nakamura, you can see it through that. And then again, if you just want to see some old matches, or say like when Finn Balor signed for WWE, right, and Kevin Owens as well, right, I didn't know a lot about their previously before WWE, so I'm like, okay, I can research stuff, so I'll type in Kevin Steen, Prince Devitt, and I'm like, this stuff's really good. But that's what the internet's here for, it's a really good research tool. This is more generally obviously the internet rather than dirt sheets, but again, like stuff like Wikipedia and all that, again, if you're unsure of a wrestler, it gives you an idea of what they're like and their path to get here. But another thing with like the dirt sheets, we discussed this, I wasn't even on the podcast, maybe just been us speaking, was the reports for tapings and stuff like that, and everybody's like, oh, there was only two matches on this episode of NXT, God knows what's happening, must be a terrible show. And then we get that 10-minute Finn Balor documentary, which is just amazing.
Exactly.
And again, as you say, we're reading one man's version of it. Completely, just take it with a pinch of salt, watch it for yourself, and see how you think.
Exactly. I think I think it can work either way, I suppose, as well. But I mean, I guess it's a good thing that they're there, because it gets everybody to discuss things, as opposed to just being in a situation where they're like, oh no, I think that's shite, and even giving guys like us, like as small as it is, a voice to actually discuss things in public and look for opinions and seeing what other people think, as opposed to just dealing with the same old stuff all the time. And because it always seems like the majority of the internet has the same opinion, which isn't true. And they always say, oh, the IWC doesn't like Cena, and it's like, actually, that's probably a small percentage of people don't like Cena. The majority really respect the guy for his work. Especially the majority of actual wrestling fans will respect the guy for his work. And the people that don't are just, don't want to say they're daft, but it's the kind of people that are like, you can imagine it's just the same smarky folk that would have been in 1998, 1999, like, stone cold shit. It's the same thing every week. Don't know how anybody's taking this guy shit. He doesn't even do moves. He just kicks folk in the corner, throws right hands, does nothing, then he hits a stunner. That's crap. Same shit every week. And it's like, that's some of the greatest stuff in wrestling history.
Why is Too Cold Scorpio not champion? Because he can do some cool flips.
That's true. There was definitely folk saying that in 99, 98, 97, whatever. There must have been guys like, I don't know, but then you get the other side and you've got folk going like, why is Ahmed Johnson here? And it's like, why is Ahmed Johnson here? He doesn't do anything. But that's just, it's positives and it's negatives. But I really feel like if they want to do something and make it a surprise on television, they just need trustworthy people. Like, Jericho's stuff, like, we need has a surprise return. It's good because they can keep it a surprise. The Seth Rollins turning on the Shield kept it a surprise, so it was good. So it can be done. But if you're basing your television on stuff being a surprise every other week, it's not a great thing to be doing anyway. So, but I feel as if it's mainly a positive thing, purely for giving people, because these dirt sheets aren't just dirt sheets. They're like, now they've expanded into like whole online websites, and it gives you an opportunity to look back to see what people's opinions were in the past as well, as opposed to just present day.
I feel as well, just like talking on like just general what how folk on the internet perceive wrestling, like a lot of people are always like, oh, he's a great wrestler, but he may have an absolutely terrible character. And I think both of us completely realise WWE is all about the character. So that's how when we talk about it, it's very little about the match. It is mostly about how they should improve the character. And I just feel not a lot of people get that. That's why we'll be like, we may not, we obviously agree that Roman Reigns isn't the greatest wrestler in the world, but we'll always say how he can improve his character. We know that if we were WWE, we want the guy that's going to make us the most money, and we can see that from their perspective. So that's how we're looking at these guys and going, Stardust, where's the money? That's what we're looking for. We're more so looking at the money and how their character can make the money and how the feud can make the money for the WWE, because let's be honest, that's what the WWE is there for. They're there to make money.
Well, that's the thing. Even during this podcast, we spoke about Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, and their match was great. But if that was just two generic guys wearing trunks, knee pads, elbow pads, boots, one guy's bald, one guy's got a wee bit of hair, they could have had that same identical match and it would have been shit. And that match is only good because of the characters, and you buy into it because of the characters. And they told a great story, but the story's only as good as it is because of the characters telling the story. So, I mean, it's quite clear that's what... So you can talk about matches as much as you want, but it's very much a each to their own type thing with wrestling matches as well. Everybody likes something different, so...
That's the whole thing with Daniel Bryan. A lot of folk were saying, oh, he's really good in the ring and all that, but obviously, like, how can folk get behind his character? But the reason that a lot of people got behind his character was he was one of the guys, as soon as he came into WWE, debut in NXT, put down that he had no charisma, and then that storyline really continued, just like, you're a good wrestler, but you can't connect, and you're not good enough to get to the elite level, and that's how I think a lot of fans tapped into that. Then he started bringing in yes and no, and the fans really connected to him. So it wasn't a case, this guy's an amazing wrestler. It was like, this guy's a really believable character and an underdog that we can fully get behind. And that's how I think WrestleMania just blew into a completely new dimension. It was just so over.
Exactly, and that's all. But his character was just who he is. His character was the underdog. He was just a wrestler. That's all he was. And usually that doesn't work. But the guy's obviously got a natural... it's not even, you can't even say it's charisma,
It's just likeable.
It's just genuine. He just comes across as genuine, and sometimes that's the biggest issue with somebody like Roman Reigns at this point in time as well. But I mean, the thing, like, the internet as well, like, sometimes plays into that because people can portray their characters online as well, so that can obviously help them build their character through Twitter or Facebook or whatever as well. But I mean, I think mostly it's been a positive. The internet, dirt sheets as a whole. I mean, dirt sheets have been around since when's the Observers at like 84 or something like that started. Meltzer started doing it, so. But that's because it's easy enough to avoid them as well. If you don't want to see that kind of thing, it's easy enough to avoid. That's how I think for the fact that in the late 90s, early 2000s, like when Raw was on a Friday night, and we would have managed to avoid spoilers, no bother, because nobody had any intention of going and looking up what happened. So,
I'll be honest, I didn't know Raw was on a Monday. I generally thought it was a Friday, but that's because there's a wee guy.
But I mean, that's exactly it. Just, but that's a great question. Just an interesting thing to discuss there. Cheers, Luca. I think that's all for this week anyway. Mostly because I think I'm about to fall asleep, to be quite honest. But I build up to the July 2nd show to discuss next week as well, on top of Raw. Glad to see that they're actually promoting it properly on the show as well now, and making it clear that Brock Lesnar's match will be broadcast live. So,
did you see the small vignette? The Beast is going to the East.
Beast in the East.
But just really looking forward to seeing that. Obviously looking forward to another good week of NXT. Really looking forward to the second part of the Balor documentary, because that was really well done. That paid him in a lot of light.
Unbelievable to see so much ICW on NXT.
So many familiar faces though.
Exactly. Just couldn't believe it when that thing like Mark Dallas had tweeted or posted on Facebook a couple of weeks ago about just being contacted about somebody using some of our footage, unbelievable or whatever. Certainly got the impression that it'd probably be for WWE, but didn't think we would get to see a couple of minutes worth of ICW and NXT. Again, talking ICW, they've just announced a massive UK tour as well, so interesting to see what happens there. Anyway, I think that's enough for this week. As usual, that's been myself and Maxie on the show. You can catch both of us on Twitter or something if you can be bothered pestering us during the week, pestering us when you can't get the show on iTunes or whatever. But for just general stuff, you can catch us on Twitter and Facebook at Hour Broadway. You can subscribe to the show through iTunes and Stitcher. Stitcher. On Hour Broadway as well. Kind of looking into some other stuff, but for the time being, you can just get your regular direct download through hourbroadway.tk. And again, if you've got any questions or anything you'd like us to discuss, just hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. And thanks for listening.